Welcome to Camp Constitution Radio with your host, Hal Shurtleff. This show is heard on WBCQ The Planet every Monday evening at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's broadcast out of the beautiful Monticello, Maine. If you want to know where that is, well, if you take Route 95, I-95, all the way to its northern end and just about an exit before the last exit and go north on Route 1, you'll run into Monticello. And it's in Aroostook County, Maine. And it's also rebroadcast on ipmnation.org on Saturday afternoons. I think it's either 1 or 1:30 p.m. This is an online 24-hour news radio show broadcast, and it comes out of Concord, New Hampshire. My good friend Jen Coffey made that possible, so thanks to Jen. You can also listen to it on YouTube. Usually within a short time, we try to get the show up on YouTube and make it available there as well. And the show is hosted by Camp Constitution, and if you are interested, visit our website. You'll see that we've already added a new addition, the Camp Constitution Speakers Bureau. We're still it's still sort of in progress, but you'll see several speakers, including yours truly, that are available. In some cases, limited basis. And what we're asking people, if you're interested in having one of our speakers, contact the speaker directly, contract with that speaker, that person, and the topics are usually there in the biographical sketch. And then the camp will get a small percentage of the proceeds. In some cases, we would be happy to subsidize or even cover the costs, depending on the venue where it is. And so we're excited about that. Also excited about the Sam Blumenfeld archive, which you can find on the site. I got word that in the month of August we had 187,000 views, and that's pretty impressive. I think this show, since it's heard around the world, may have helped a little bit, but I think some cases, some things just take a life of their own. And our summer camp, which is held every summer, it's in the Toanippi Retreat Center in Ringe, New Hampshire, and next year's camp is July 2nd to the 9th, so you can get information about that. Well, I'd like to introduce our guest today. I'm very happy and pleased to have Brian Camenker of Massachusetts on Mass Resistance. How are you doing, Brian?
I'm doing great, Hal. Good to be here.
Well, good to have you on, and I did happen to, I know I've invited you on in the past, and I guess just time constraints or what have you, but we met at a sad occasion, the passing of a fine and good patriot, John O'Mara, who I know was a supporter of your organization as well as Camp Constitution. He was 80 years of age, and he was actually, I thought he was closer to mid-60s. He looked like he was in his early 60s, and probably had the heart of and the spirit of a much younger person. But he died relatively suddenly. I was on the phone with him, I think, a day or so before he died, and he was very pleased with what we were doing at Camp Constitution, and so it was good to see you, but not under those circumstances. But let's have a little bit of history of your organization, Mass Resistance, if you could.
Well, I guess it started. It's funny. It started when my kids in elementary school, they started having, the sex ed program.
And you live in Newton, by the way, you live in Newton, Massachusetts, which is just a suburb of Boston.
Right. And I remember I started to get involved questioning it and and then there was all this reaction against me. And you were the first one, I think this was in 1993, who called me up and came to my house and said, you're not the only one, we support you and all of that. I remember that. I mean, it was like 23 years ago.
Time flies, isn't it? Yeah.
But I remember you were the first one who called me and said, I want to support you on this. You're doing the right thing. And anyway, after that, one thing led to another, and we have this statewide and now sort of a national organization, Mass Resistance, which helps parents deal with sexuality and homosexual issues in the public schools across the country and in several other countries. We just started a chapter in Nigeria.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I know. And we're probably about to start one in Australia and also Great Britain, or London actually. And we have, we're involved in probably a dozen foreign countries, and in one way or another, we have supporters in all 50 states. But it all started in Newton, Massachusetts, when I simply questioned the programs that they were pushing at my kids' school, and got an enormous amount of abuse in the newspaper and other places. So, and I just decided I wasn't going to back down.
I think they were accusing you of being a tool of the Christian coalition, and you're a man of the Jewish faith, and you thought, I think you said, well, I joined them anyway. If they're going to accuse me of being a member of this group, I might as well join them.
Yeah, I know. That happened. They accused me of being part of the Christian coalition, and I finally said, yep, I am.
And I might as well join.
They quit accusing me.
A Jewish member of a Christian coalition. Yeah.
I was one of the state speakers. I got to be pretty high up in the state organization.
Wow. But I wanted to, there's a lot of questions. We only have a little less than a half hour. You have been fighting, I refer to it as the homosexual agenda, and there is an agenda. And on your website, is it massresistance.org?
Right.
You have an article that you did a few years ago. What has same-sex marriage done to Massachusetts? Now, let me qualify that. There are some people out there, libertarian types or those who maybe even conservative in most issues. They'll say something like, well, the government should get out of the marriage business anyway, so what's the big deal? We'll just if people can marry, let them marry. It doesn't make any difference. Could you address that very important question?
Well, I mean, the most obvious thing is who people marry affects everybody, because everybody has to recognize it as a marriage. So if people marry their sister or something, or same sex, everybody has to recognize it. Businesses have to recognize it, on and on and on. And so this booklet, How Same-Sex Marriage Affected Massachusetts, it actually started out as like an 8-page article that I wrote during the Proposition 8 issue into California. I think.
And how was that a few years ago?
Yeah, that was, when was that? I think it was either 2008 or 2012.
That was a question on the ballot to allow the so-called same-sex. Right. Yeah.
And it really took off. I ended up just on that being on radio shows all over California and then in Florida and other places where they were voting on this. And then we expanded it to a larger booklet, and then we made an even larger video of it. And that video has been sent all over the world and translated into several foreign languages, mostly without my knowledge.
Is that available on YouTube, by the way?
Oh, yeah, it's on YouTube.
Okay. Oh, excellent.
It's also, it's on YouTube in the regular version and in Chinese and in in like Polish and Norwegian and Spanish, and it's amazing. And so what we do is we go through this long thing of how it really changes society in the public schools, in the businesses, in the government, in just all over. And it's really quite shocking. I mean, I've been invited to New York to give us show the video to United Nations delegates.
Really?
Yeah, this was a couple of years ago, and it really shocks people. I mean, people cry when they see it.
Give some specific examples of how, as many as you can, of how things that the laws have changed. So this idea of laissez-faire, libertarianism, live and let live, let people do their own thing. If it doesn't harm, no harm, no foul, things of that.
Well, I'm going to get back to this. I mean, if two people are going to go off, and live, I don't know, out in the woods somewhere and do whatever they want, it doesn't affect anybody. But marriage affects everybody, because everybody has to recognize it for what it is. In other words, if you're married to your 12-year-old sister, everybody has, if it's an official marriage, then it has to be that way in government records, that businesses have to do it, all through society. And that's why saying, well, the government get out of the marriage business No, the government can't. You know, the government has to recognize what marriage is, because how are people going to relate to everybody?
That's right.
And yeah, I mean, this whole libertarian thing is so ridiculous anyway. You can't have a free society without morality. It doesn't work. I mean, often people wish it would work. You know, it'd be nice if it works, maybe, but it doesn't work. And this idea that it could work is simply a fantasy.
Well, one of the things I point out to people is that the state of Massachusetts and other states, as well as the federal government, have invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in the promotion of this lifestyle that actually takes people, kills them, lowers their life expectancy. And that doesn't sound very conservative to me or very libertarian to me, when there's a vested interest that the government is aggressively promoting it and spending taxpayers' money doing so.
Yeah, I agree. And it's as I said, there's just so many things. I'm trying to get to it, but over and over and over again, hospitals. Let's see.
Birth certificates have changed, haven't they?
Say that again.
A birth certificate in Massachusetts.
Oh yeah,
the gender.
The birth certificates. Let's see. I'm just trying to remember what I wrote in that thing. Schools have. You see, here was another thing: is if same-sex marriage is so-called legal, and that's debatable because it was a court case.
That's right.
Then schools have to teach it as if it were, legitimate. And in fact, a federal judge in the David Parker case said that, ruled that because it's legal, so-called legal, that schools have to teach kids, even in elementary school, even in kindergarten, that same-sex marriage is exactly the same as regular marriage, and that they have an obligation to do that. This is what a federal judge ruled.
An obligation,
and that parents don't have a choice. And this is in the you could look it up. I mean, this was a federal judge's ruling.
And this was in the early mid '90s, late '90s.
No, this was after this was I think in 2007.
A little later than that. Okay.
Right.
Because I remember when Dave was holding an event on Lexington Green, which I consider a pretty hallowed place, and there was so much resistance and many clergy members showed up, to with noisemakers and shout him down, and he had to be escorted by the police for his own safety.
It was just horrible.
So that article is available as a free download. Am I correct on your website?
Yeah, you can, and you can. I would encourage people to watch the video.
Okay.
That's expanded. But even things like the legal profession, same-sex marriage is now on the Bar Association test. So
wow.
if you're taking the bar test, they ask you same-sex marriage questions. And in fact, they had a situation some years back where one guy flunked the test because he refused to answer those questions.
Interesting.
And there was a big thing in the paper over that. And,
well, it was interesting. Three of my children were born in Newton, and I had to get their birth certificates for different reasons. And I remember picking up, and this was just a few years ago, picking up the law on marriage, because you go to the town hall, the city hall, to get a marriage license, and it said something like a male can't marry his sister or his stepmother or this or this or that or that. And I think all those laws are still in effect. But I remember
they're all in effect, yeah.
They have not been repealed. I think I asked my state senator or my state rep, I said, can I marry my brother? And they didn't know how to answer it. I said, I know I can't marry my sister, but can I marry my brother? And they didn't want to answer it. I mean, that's how absurd it is.
Yeah.
So, is that possible to marry your brother in Massachusetts?
Don't give them any ideas. I'm sure that's where they're going next. I mean,
yeah.
and see, this is another interesting thing is where did all of those rules come from? You know, I mean, that you can't marry your sister, you can't marry your close relatives. They're all biblical. You know,
That's right.
I mean, and that is the basis of basically
of morality
and laws. And you know, if you really go back on the Massachusetts Constitution, you know, laws are supposed to be based on on Scripture. Of course, they don't do that anymore.
Massachusetts Constitution is quite a religious document, and it talks about that you have an obligation, the duty to worship the great architect of the universe. And they're not talking about Bechtel Corporation,
right.
Talking about the Lord God, and that when you when you vote for elected officials, you're supposed to look for piety and morality would be the important qualities, things of that nature.
Yeah. Hard to find these days.
Now, you are, I would say, a very fearless individual because you attend these so-called gay pride rallies with your camera every year to document some of the perversion, and some of it's so bad that you really couldn't put it, you wouldn't want your young child exposed to these sorts of things.
Well,
and they also do this, they still do the so-called gay prom in Boston City Hall?
Well, I mean, I don't necessarily go to all of them myself. I mean, we have a lot of volunteers that do this, and it's not. I mean, it doesn't take that much courage, really, because they're all public events.
Right.
I mean, a lot of the people.
Well, they know you. I mean, you are sort of one of the public enemy. If you're not number one, but maybe Scott Lively's number one, you're probably there somewhere on the list.
I don't really go to that many of them. A lot of the people that go are mothers of kids who've been drawn into homosexuality through some of their events, things like that. Yeah, I mean, I am so well known that I don't go to that many of them. You know, the gay pride parades they're these huge things, and this is a very public event, so anybody can stand on the corner with with a camera. And we have some, you know, we have a lot of people that are willing to do that.
Well, give us an example of now in Boston, most big cities, New York and other big cities have these types of events, and the average person who doesn't show up for this, and it seems to be like almost not every politician, but quite a few in both major parties line up to participate in this.
Now, here's the thing. I mean, the fact that you're asking me these questions is interesting because the most pro-family groups ignore that. Most pro-family groups don't want to go anywhere near that, and the fact that we cover this stuff makes us unusual. You know, and this is a big problem in the United States. Is that the pro-family movement in the United States is deplorable. It caves in on so many issues. It's afraid to, you know, confront on principle, and they don't want to expose this stuff. They don't want to go, you know, be anywhere near it. They want to compromise with it, and that's the problem. I mean, all of this stuff is in public view. You know, it doesn't take like rocket scientists to walk downtown on Gay Pride Week and see it.
Right,
and it's just nobody does it.
Well, I know there was a candidate for office. I won't mention his name, and I liked the fellow. He seemed to be good on many issues. And when I heard he was a participant in this parade, I said, if this is your constituency, I want nothing to do with you. I'm sorry, you're probably good on most of the issues, but this is a very bad case of judgment in your part. And if you're going to march along these people who are God-hating, you know, first off, I look at a lot of these people as they're caught up in a lie, and they need repentance. They need to get out of that death style. But when they're shaking their fist at God and they're mocking those of believers and those of faith, I got a problem, and I can't support those kinds of politicians, and I don't see why. And we're talking about.
Was this a Republican?
What's that?
Was this guy a Republican?
Actually, he was running as a Democrat, but I think he was running as a Democrat just because he was running in Boston. It wasn't that he was a lifelong Democrat. Well, Doug Bennett is his name.
I don't know. But you're right. These parades. I mean, we put out a video recently on it. I mean, they are just disgusting. I mean, the people that participate in these things, you really have to feel sorry for them. There's something really tragic going on in their heads that they would even want to do that in public, that they would even think of doing some of that stuff, because it's much of it is just it's just so sexually perverse. It's very dysfunctional mentally to do this kind of thing, and then the hate that comes out of it, the extreme anti-Catholicism that is in that shows in these parades. They have these guys dressed up as nuns, just doing these gross things,
lewd things, yes.
Yeah, and just so much. And as I said, we put out a video of it. I don't know, a couple of months ago, and and then you have, of course, all of these corporations that are part of it. All of the major corporations, or many of them.
Bank of America being one of them.
Oh, Bank of America, Walmart, Microsoft, Google, the airlines, the banks, the hospitals. They're all part of it.
And what was interesting in South Boston, the South Boston Veterans Parade, the St. Patrick's Parade, they held out. They actually won a Supreme Court case back in the late 90s, unanimous. All 9 justices, liberals, conservatives, moderates, said, yeah, this is a private organization. They can exclude whomever they wish. Now they have homosexuals, and to me it's Boston's second homosexual parade. And this was a traditional thing. St. Patrick was the patron saint of Ireland, and it was celebrating also Evacuation Day, of course, in Boston. But this, and I think some of the, it was a year before they actually started, there were some of these corporations say, we're not sponsoring you anymore. Some of these, even Sam Adams Beer, well, because you won't allow homosexuals in the parade. And homosexuals can parade all they want to, but they can't have organizations that are homosexual organizations, if you belong to a band, you're in a marching band that could be from whatever, that's not a problem. And I remember Mayor Menino would not allow Boston police and the firefighters to march in the parade wearing uniforms because they wouldn't allow these homosexual groups.
Right, yeah. And the fact that they allowed them this past year had to do with extreme pressure and threats from the mayor's office and other stuff.
That's right. The bully.
And also the they managed to sort of take over the I don't want to say the majority of the board that runs it, but they had enough people on it that they were able to sort of use illegal means, in many people's opinion, to force that on it. Now we'll see what happens, but it's not like they overwhelmingly wanted to do it. I've talked to a lot of the people involved, so it was all pressure from the mayor's office. But it's like, why does this group feel the need to be in every single parade? It's just, there's just something weird about that. Why can't a parade just be a parade without including
sexuality?
Sexuality.
I've never seen an adulterer's pride event. It's interesting too, and the history of this so-called gay Pride Week. It was the Stonewall riots at a homosexual bar, a barroom that was dominated by homosexuals, that was mob-owned, and the police were involved. They were arresting somebody, a male prostitute, and the patrons just started beating at the police. Is that the right take on it? And that's what they're celebrating.
I don't actually know the background as well as I
Yeah.
I read about it once, and I didn't really. I sort of forgot, so I can't say for sure exactly what happened. But it shouldn't be a national monument or whatever stupid thing.
Oh, right. They want to turn it into some kind of national monument, right? A place where probably a lot of people contracted the AIDS virus by engaging in activity in this place, is somehow now some kind of national monument that we have to go.
I think it was 1969, so I think that was before AIDS.
60 years.
But I don't know. It's the world is going crazy. That's for sure. But as I said, I blame, and this is a sore subject, and I blame the pro-family movement for a lot of the triumphs of the left, because they don't want to fight it properly. They want to compromise. I mean,
and they don't show up. They don't show up for hearings, and they tolerate it. And you see that in. I attend a church. I'm a Christian, professing Christian, and I'm not suggesting that. But most of the churches are silent on this issue, and somehow it's going to go away. And they're going to be confronting this issue. These militant homosexuals. And I always qualify. There are plenty of people in the homosexuals that live and let live. Let's do our thing. We're not going to mess with you. We won't be. They don't always agree with. They don't agree with some of this militancy. But there are some that they want to destroy the Christian church. They want to destroy Orthodox beliefs, of people, the Jewish faith, etc. They want to destroy that, and they're very aggressive about it. And I mean, I think you of course have read what they call the Gay Manifesto that came out in 1988. I remember when I first saw it, I couldn't believe this. I actually called the newspaper, the Gay Community News, now defunct. I said, "Did you guys really publish this, or is this just something that Jerry Falwell's made up?" Oh, we published this, and I think there are people who have this kind of mindset that really want to silence people who dare disagree. And in some countries like Sweden, if you go out and said publicly that homosexuality is a sin, you're going to go to jail. Right.
Yeah, and that's why people need to be able to speak out, and people don't feel like speaking out as much as they should. I mean, the whole gay marriage thing is a good case in point, where our side didn't want to argue on the basis of the morality of homosexuality, the medical issues of homosexuality, or any of those things. They wanted to argue on the basis of like every child needs a mother and a father or something like that.
Right. Yes. Right.
Which was sort of a mushy argument. It didn't really capture the essence of the problem, and a lot of the pro-family groups would say, well, we can accept civil unions, we can accept domestic partnerships. We just want to protect the word marriage.
It's called compromise, right?
Yeah, and if you've lost the battle if you say that.
What was the book? It was called After the Ball. It was written by a homosexual activist, and he said something to the effect that the minute the average person, when they think of homosexuality, they shrug their shoulders in indifference, we've won. It's just a matter of time. I'm not quoting verbatim, but that if you accept the lifestyle as something that's normal, then they've won the battle. And I think you've got a lot of good history with the subject, going back to the Kinsey report and the amount of millions of dollars that have been spent by the Rockefeller Foundation. They knew who this guy was, and they knew what he was doing, and they came out to sort of normalize not just homosexuality, but deviant behavior and promiscuity. And boy, it's really messed up our culture, hasn't it? It hasn't really worked out too well for us.
Yeah, the whole Playboy thing, and Kinsey and all of that. No, it hasn't worked out too well. I mean,
we have 1 minute left, so why don't you give the listeners and the folks who watch on YouTube information how they can get a hold of you and your organization?
Well, I would encourage people to go to massresistance.org. That's massresistance.org. And you can get on our email list by, clicking get on our email list. Of course, you can donate. You can get involved. We have chapters all over the country and more all the time. You can read about what we do, and it's good.
And I'd say sign up for at the very least, sign up for your email notices.
Sure. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Brian, I want to commend you. You're one of my heroes. You've been for quite a long time, and your I call it a ministry, is vitally important. And I'm glad to see that you're getting noticed all over the world, because this is a worldwide problem. So God bless you, and we'll be in touch. And I want to thank the listeners. You've been listening to Camp Constitution Radio on WBCQ The Planet. Until next week, good night, and God bless you.